I think we'll deadlift today. We're gonna conventional deadlift, maybe 300, maybe 600, I don't know. All right, what's up guys? Welcome to YouTube. Today we're gonna be doing a leg day. We're gonna get started on a sled. We're gonna do a sled push and a pull, and we're gonna superset that with just a suitcase carry. I like doing these as a warm up on leg days. I feel like it kind of gets you fully primed up, and with a push and a pull, you're only working like the concentric portions of musculature. You're not really doing any type of eccentric loading, so it's not too fatiguing. And then our suitcase carry, we're gonna try to, stay upright, and we're not leaning to one side or the other. And this helps a lot with like our core and our spine. So let's get started. We're not pushing with our arms out extended. We're in here, we're deep in it with our shoulders fully down, back, retracted. And with each step, we're trying to take large steps. So we're trying to push as much hip flexion as possible, and then pushing through our full leg extension. So long strides. You're not trying to run the weight, but you're trying to move the weight quickly. So on the sled pull, this is going to be just really a quad movement. We're not pulling like this. We're pulling more torso upright and seated down, so that we're actually working here. People you'll see, pulling 20 plates or something like that, and it's just like their body weight, and that's not what we're trying to do. Straight arms, sit down, pull. After our sled push pull, we usually do a couple other lifts before we get into compound stuff. So like leg extensions, leg curls, hip abduction and adduction. And sometimes I prefer to do them in a certain order. Sometimes when the gym is busy, I just kind of do them in an order where we've got an available machine. So we're gonna start with our leg curls. We'll do seated. I usually prefer to do seated because as we're here and we pull our body and our hips forward, we've got elongated stretch hamstring that we're pulling through. Most of our muscles, we have more hypertrophy signaling under that lengthened state. And so pretty beneficial to do that. And then we'll move on to either extensions or abduction, adduction. And then we'll get started on our more compound moves. I think we'll deadlift today. We're gonna conventional deadlift, maybe 300, maybe 600, I don't know. So let's get started. We're going to always make sure that our knees here are at this pivot point, because that's where we're pivoting from. Have this thing pressed down so that we've actually got pressure on our quads and our legs aren't moving around up and down. As far as our foot angle, femur angle, like stay pretty neutral. Don't go and externally rotate outward or really inward. Just kind of stay straight. And then from here, we'll pull our body forward so that we're pulling our hips, rotating them forward. So we've got more stretch to our hamstrings. And then we'll start pulling. Always have good control for your eccentrics. Come to this top part, pull down. Almost think to yourself that as you're coming up, you're even dynamically stretching the hamstrings by flexing on your quads, extending the knee, and then pulling down. And these warm-up sets are not necessarily to failure. It's just maybe 12, 15 reps. Do some hip abduction before we go over in deadlift. So on abduction, pretty simple. Put this, into the most inner position so that we have as much tension as we can at this beginning range of motion. We're gonna be seated, we're gonna be leaned forward a little bit, but seated. Don't get your butt up off the pad, and just abduct your hips as wide as they go, and then slowly eccentric back to the center and back out wide. So one of the reasons that we want to have a little bit of lean forward, that spinal flexion, when we have spinal flexion, our nervous system actually recruits a little bit more of the glutes to do work with, you know, hip thrust. If you were doing like hyperextensions with your back fully flexed over, coming back up is going to recruit more glutes. So we're not going to be back like this. So let's get started. And you know, your first set or so can kind of be like a warm-up set. So you might be doing 15, 20 reps, and then kind of get into progressively heavier sets. We're actually going to just superset this really quick with adduction, so pulling inward, working our adductors a little bit. This machine is kind of a combo machine, so depending on whether these are placed in or out, you know, you can just do both abduction and adduction on here. So let's get started. So on these, you're going to try to slowly do your eccentric and get as wide as you can with however much abduction you can move your hips, and then pull back to center line. We're gonna conventional deadlift, maybe 300, maybe 600, I don't know. In the future, we're gonna do a deadlift tutorial because deadlift and squat are gonna be probably your two most complicated lifts, and there's a whole lot of variables that you need to know to perform them properly to kind of mitigate any type of risk associated with them. A lot of people think that it's like a dangerous exercise, and while it can be, it can also be a very safe exercise.